This is the Blackprint, where being black is always the topic of conversation. The Blackprint is brought to you by Rhymes and Designs and Good Evil Art. Welcome back to the Blackprint. It's MJ. Today's segment is going to be a little different. I decided that occasionally on Wednesday I would release a segment that's more like a current events segment as opposed to mini lectures. So today I decided to talk about the movie Get Out. I went to go see Get Out a couple of weeks ago and I had a lot of thoughts about it. I decided to talk about this movie because obviously it's about Black people and many of the things we face, and it's wrapped up into a horror film, I think, to really bring the message home. But I definitely think it's the proper subject matter for the Blackprint. I've been seeing a lot of thought pieces about all of these metaphorical things about Get Out, and I'm going to be honest, I saw some of the things, but then again, I think with the success of the movie, people are digging deeper and deeper and deeper into the film, and I think to some extent, people are going deeper than Jordan Peele did himself. In terms of entertainment value, the movie, it was good, it was enjoyable. I think other people were more shocked by the concept than I was, so I think maybe that's where my reaction and my excitement for the film, differs from other people. So I'm going to talk about my reaction to the film and just some of the things I saw. Like I said, the entertainment value was pretty high, but as an avid moviegoer and movie watcher, when I go and see a movie, I like to think about more than the entertainment value. I evaluate the film on many different levels, including cinematography, dialogue, plot, acting, etc. I like the film. I saw problems with it. Cinematically, I thought the sunken place was, visually, I thought it was kind of weak. I thought it could have been done better. Also thought it was really weird how the Black people that had been lobotomized, how they struggle to speak like the people who took over their bodies and their mind partially. I thought that was a really strange effect. I didn't really understand why that would happen, considering that it wasn't just hypnosis, it was an actual lobotomy. But one of my biggest issues with the film was the characterization of Chris. Watching the movie, it just didn't seem like the character Chris's reaction to the situation was accurate, considering the information that the film provided about Chris. I think that issue came into play because while Jordan Peele, represents as a Black man, he's lived in his skin his entire life, I get the feeling that his connection to his Blackness doesn't extend too far beyond living in his own skin. I mean, he has a white mother. His father is Black, but from what I can tell, he wasn't involved in Jordan Peele's life. His wife is white. And so I wonder how much interaction did he have with the Black community, with Black people. It seemed to me that he doesn't really understand Black people as in Black people who have been raised in the Black community, Black people who have been raised by Black people who really don't step outside of the Black community unless, you're going to work or you're going to school. I think that experience is different than the experience of being a biracial man who has probably spent the majority of his life in the white community, being socialized in the white community. So I felt like the characterization of Chris was kind of tone deaf. The clues they give you about Chris, you see his friend Rod. For many of us in the Black community, there was nothing atypical about Rod. He could have easily been your friend or your cousin or somebody you knew from your neighborhood. For a lot of Black people, you see Chris say time and time again that he's uncomfortable, he's uncomfortable being the only Black person around all of these white people. He mentioned that he expressed that sentiment on several different occasions. He talked about racism with his white girlfriend, the way he talked, the way he walked, but yet and still, the situation in the film played out the way it did. Like, it seemed really strange to me that they'd had a discussion. Like, he specifically asked Rose. He asked Rose if she had told her parents that he was Black, and she said no, that she didn't tell them because it wasn't going to be a problem because they weren't like that. And then they arrived at her parents' house, and right off the bat, you could tell that they weren't as open-minded as she had originally made them seem. And it was strange to me because they had the conversation. She's like, oh, they're acting like this and they don't usually act like this and they've never acted like this before. Basically acknowledging that her parents had some discriminatory views against her Black boyfriend. And he was so nonchalant about it. And I feel like she wasn't very responsive to his feelings. She wasn't very apologetic. She kind of just brushed it off. And that was strange to me that he didn't have a stronger reaction to her being okay with him being extremely uncomfortable in that situation, and uncomfortable on the level of racism. Like, he just showed up as a Black person and that's why they were acting like that. And she just, oh my God, I didn't know. It's like he came home with her, but he felt uncomfortable having the difficult conversation with her. Like, I asked you this for a reason and now I feel some type of way. I'm all the way out here. It just didn't seem accurate. And there was also that moment after he took the picture of Andre, and Andre kind of woke up out of his hypnosis, and he was telling Rose that is not a seizure. He knew what a seizure was, and they sat and they had that conversation. And then I kind of felt like out of the blue, he was like, Rose, I love you. You're all I have. Meanwhile, he has his best friend, Rod, that he calls all of the time. He has Rod pet sitting his dog. Rod is such a good friend that he's so concerned about Chris that he goes to the police. And then when the police aren't responsive, he drives out to that neighborhood to come and rescue Chris, even though he knows that the situation is probably something out of a horror film, something unimaginable. He has all of these, horrible ideas about what the situation could be, and he still comes to rescue Chris with no help. So Chris has this excellent best friend who loves him so much that he would be willing to risk his own life to save him, but yet all he has is Rose. He's gonna put up with anything and everything just so he can, be with Rose, even though what I didn't understand about the film was, why couldn't he just leave their home and then him and Rose would meet back up when she came back to the city? It's like, just because you left their home didn't mean that you were leaving Rose. So I never understood how they didn't discuss that as a solution to resolve the whole issue. Like, there should have been something that intervened where it's like, oh, well, I can't just leave because of whatever. Chris had such a strong intuition about what was going on. All of those things, they didn't go over his head. The strange behavior of the other Black people there, he noticed all of that. Of course, he took note of the woman squeezing his arms and all of the comments and how people were like, oh, let me see how physically strong you are and stuff. He noticed all of those things, and he just ignored them. He just brushed them off. He just kept it moving like, oh, this is weird. It's like, how many times has someone like Chris been in the situation where white people are doing all of these things, saying all of these things? Why would he be comfortable with that situation enough to stay in that situation? To me, that didn't seem like it made any sense. One of the things I thought was really, really unrealistic was his response to being hypnotized without his permission. He sat there and he told the mother multiple times that he was uncomfortable with being hypnotized, that he was not interested, and she hypnotized him anyways. And he woke up and he was kind of a little like, oh, I can't believe she did this. But then, oh, I don't feel like smoking anymore. To me, that was unbelievable. Like, I literally could not believe that situation. When you think about Black people, you think about mental health, you think about a lot of Black people are uncomfortable even going to the doctor and taking medication. And for good reason. That's one of the huge reasons why Black people need more Black physicians and mental health professionals, because a lot of times white doctors or non-Black doctors in general just don't understand their patients when their patients are Black, or they give them lower quality of care, or they just prescribe medication instead of telling their patients about, different lifestyle changes that they could introduce in order to live a healthier life. So it's, for good reason, Black people are skeptical. Hypnotism? I just don't believe that a Black person will be hypnotized. But I really can't believe that anyone, would be hypnotized against their will. But especially Black people, considering how we feel about mental health, considering how we feel about how we view brain health, and we are uncomfortable with anything that feels like a manipulation of our brain, of our body. I just couldn't believe that he would take it so well. I feel like that was one of those big glaring errors where you kind of ask yourself, what does Jordan Peele know about the Black community? Like, how integrated is he into the Black community where he would represent something that's so intrusive, such as hypnotism, and not have the character have this big reaction to it? That just didn't seem accurate to me. There was also something that really bothered me. It really stood out to me. When Chris went to the box, the little red box and the little space in the wall, and he saw these pictures of all these Black people with Rose, including Walter and including Georgina. Of course, everyone's assuming in the audience that Chris knows exactly what is going on, not to the extent of the lobotomies, but he now understands that Rose lured them there, that she was a trap, that there was deception. And then it gets to the point in the movie where he has the choice to either end Rose's life himself or to let her die, and he decides not to do it. Actually, I felt like that was really tone deaf. It's like, this woman, she has lied to you. It's been nothing but deception. She was a predator preying on you for 4 or 5 months. She learned your life story. She learned all of these things about you just to use it against you so she could lobotomize you for her community, and you don't want to kill her? You can kill everybody else, but you don't want to kill her? To me, again, something that was unbelievable. But it's like, even if for yourself, you still had so much love for her that you wouldn't kill her. She had wronged you, but not to the point where you would take her life for yourself. But what about all those other Black people, those Black people who had been lured, deceived, abducted, and then lobotomized? When a Black person gets killed by the police, all over the nation, even the world, Black people are outraged. You don't know that person killed in the street? A lot of the time, that's not your family member. That's not a friend. That's not someone you know at all. But you know that person was murdered. That person was victimized. You know that Black people are being victimized simply because they are Black, just like the people in Get Out. They were preyed on because they were Black. And for him not to feel compelled on that level, even if he didn't feel compelled on a personal level, I don't buy it. I really don't buy it. So I didn't think Chris was a realistic character. I think that when you have lived your entire life probably being one of the only black people in the room, your family is white, your community is white, and yes, they might say and do crazy things. They might say and do offensive things, but at the end of the day, those people are probably not gonna lobotomize you. So you have this higher tolerance for that kind of behavior without feeling uncomfortable enough to remove yourself from the situation. But someone like Chris, someone like me, if I found myself in that situation, there's no way I would have stayed in that situation. They would have had to bust me over the head immediately. They would have stopped playing nice with me immediately because I would have been ready to walk out. I would have been ready to hop in a car, call a taxi, something. The other thing about Chris is that some people integrate into the white community because, they don't feel like they fit into the black community for whatever reason. They feel misunderstood. They were bullied. They were teased, even though, people are bullied and teased and misunderstood in every group. So thinking you're going to move to another group and that's going to save you from those things, that's unlikely. It could easily end up being a situation like Get Out where people are just pretending. If everything looks great, sounds great, feels great, everything is so amazing, there's no negative to the situation, then there's probably some deception. And you only hope that the person's reason for deceiving you isn't to lobotomize you. It also didn't seem like Chris was particularly motivated by self-loathing. Didn't seem like he had a problem with being black. Didn't seem like he didn't like being black. Didn't seem like he didn't like black people. In fact, when he saw the couple of black people in that situation, he was like, "What's up, family? Like, how are you doing? I'm glad that you're here because now I feel a little more comfortable." He was lured because he felt alone. He lost his mother and he felt guilt for not responding. But I didn't see him as someone who was so vulnerable to take that level of abuse. Another aspect of the film that I didn't particularly like was Jordan Peele's utilization of black women. It kind of felt like black women were just a prop. A lot of times black women were introduced as comic relief. I personally didn't think the scene with Georgina when she said no was funny, but a lot of people thought it was really funny. I thought it was really disturbing and very sad and uncomfortable. But then again, there's a lot of people who are a lot more comfortable at laughing at the black woman's expense. The black women in the film, they weren't very well developed. He didn't really allow you the space to feel sympathy for him, but he did that with the black male characters. Also, it was really disturbing to me how graphic Georgina's death was compared to almost every other person in the film besides Father Armitage. To see Georgina running and then get hit by, a speeding SUV. And then, when the SUV crashes, to see her head split open. Meanwhile, Mother Armitage, she didn't die on screen. Brother Armitage didn't die on screen. Even Walter, when he took his life, it wasn't graphic. Jordan Peele decided not to show that, but he was comfortable showing Georgina that way. To me, it almost felt like there was a level of disdain for black women, but certainly a lack of understanding. Like I said, his mom is white, his wife is white. What does Jordan Peele know about black women? It didn't seem like a lot to me, but still he decided to use black women as a prop. And that bothered me. It just felt like overall, the film represented black people in an unintelligent light. Like, it was interesting to me how Rod was so much comic relief. He was saying all of these things was right, but it was just like, how could his presentation ever encourage the appropriate response? Rod had all these good intuitions, but he still never changed his presentation. And Chris didn't really react to the situation until he was this close to being lobotomized. And it's just like, I honestly don't think that it was representing Black people in a good light. And I think a lot of people aren't talking about that because Jordan Peele is biracial. He had a Black father. He considers himself to be a Black man on some level. I also kind of think that that's why it was written that way, because he feels like he has the authority to speak on these things because of who he is, because he's lived his life in that skin. But that still doesn't mean that he has an understanding, a deeper understanding of the Black community at large. I also feel like they used the comedy to just fill in plot holes, because I felt like with the understanding that the audience was going to be a lot of Black people, you have to bring in the comedy to entertain Black people, and then you can kind of not develop the story as much as you needed to. Oh, and another note on his treatment in the film of Black women, it really stood out to me when Chris said, "That bitch is crazy," referring to Georgina. Mother Armitage had hypnotized him without his permission, but she wasn't a crazy bitch, but Georgina was. As a Black woman myself, I'm tired of seeing Black women used as props, Black women just being dismissed, people not taking the time to accurately represent and depict Black women. If you don't know what to do with Black women, if you don't know how to shine an accurate light on us, then don't include us, because to me that causes more harm than good. Another thing that I didn't really hear people talk about was the fact that even though Chris was somewhat triumphant at the end, the movie was largely about pain and suffering. Just because Chris got his revenge on the Armitage family in the end doesn't take away the fact that Andre went through what he went through, Walter went through what he went through, Georgina went through what she went through, Chris went through what he went through, and that was the vast majority of the film. And I feel like these movies where pain and suffering, when all Black people really seem to experience in the film is pain and suffering, which I mean, pain and suffering is a human condition, but it's always, presented to the max when it's Black people. Those are the movies that tend to attract non-Black audiences. So it makes me wonder, are Black filmmakers making these films for us or at our expense? One of the things I did appreciate about the film, though, was that there wasn't any benevolent white people, which is grossly overrepresented in our stories and narratives. Jordan Peele didn't make you want to sympathize with any of the white people. He didn't make any of the white people redeemable. And I think that was, to me, a very strong statement. So, the film, it was cool, but I think we have to hold people to a higher standard. I think that we shouldn't hold ourselves back from being critical just because the person who made the film or wrote the film or both looks like us, because that doesn't mean that they're going to get it right. It doesn't mean that they even understand how to get it right. And it doesn't mean that that is their motivation to get it right. But, maybe I'm reaching because I haven't heard anyone say any of these things except for, my commentary about Black women. So listeners, what do you think? If you were in that situation, do you think you would have responded the way Chris responded in that situation? That's something I'm really interested to know, because that was one of my biggest criticisms of the film. I hope you enjoyed our conversation for today. Please like and share this video and subscribe to our channel. That was the Blackprint, and this is MJ sending you love, peace, and ammunition.